The dust kicked up around Clara Bennett's worn boots as she marched toward the main house of the Sterling Ranch, her fists clenched so tight her knuckles had gone white. For 3 months, she had scrubbed floors, cooked meals for 20 ranch hands, mended clothes until her fingers bled, and tended to Mrs. Sterling's invalid mother, all on the promise of $30 a month. But when she had asked for her wages that morning, ranch owner Howard Sterling had laughed in her face and tossed her $5 total, telling her to be grateful she had received anything at all, considering she was just a woman. The September sun beat down on the Texas plains in 1882, and Clara could feel sweat trickling down her spine beneath her faded calico dress as she climbed the steps to the sprawling ranch house. She had come to Copper Creek 6 months ago after her father died, leaving her with nothing but debts and a burning determination to make her own way in the world. The promise of steady work and fair wages had seemed like an answer to her prayers, but she should have known better than to trust a man like Howard Sterling, whose reputation for ruthlessness extended far beyond the boundaries of his cattle empire. She raised her hand to knock on the heavy wooden door, but it swung open before her knuckles made contact. Sterling stood there, his bulky frame filling the doorway, his thick mustache twitching with what might have been amusement or irritation. He was a man in his late 50s, gone soft around the middle from too much whiskey and too little honest work, though he liked to swagger around as if he still rode the range with his men. "What do you want now, girl?" he demanded, his voice rough as sandpaper. "I already told you that you got what you deserved. You should be thanking me for giving you room and board all this time." Clara forced herself to meet his gaze, even though every instinct told her to look away from the coldness in those pale blue eyes. "You promised me $30 a month, Mr. Sterling. 3 months means $90. You gave me 5. That is not what we agreed upon, and you know it." Sterling's face darkened, and he stepped forward, forcing Clara to take a step back. "I promised you what I thought you might be worth, but it turns out you are not worth much at all. The biscuits you made last week were hard as rocks, and my mother complained that you were rough when you bathed her. I am being generous, giving you anything." The injustice of it made Clara's throat tight with rage. She had worked herself to exhaustion every single day, had given everything she had to earn those wages honestly. That is a lie, and you know it. Your mother told me just yesterday that I was the gentlest caretaker she had ever had. You are cheating me because you think you can get away with it. "Watch your mouth," Sterling snarled, taking another step toward her. "You are on my property, and I can have you thrown off it faster than you can blink. In fact, I think it is time for you to leave. Pack your things and get out." Clara felt her stomach drop, but she held her ground. "Not without the money you owe me." Sterling's hand shot out and grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. "You will leave with what I gave you and be grateful for it, or you will leave with nothing and a reputation so ruined that no one in this county will hire you to clean their outhouses. Let go of her." The voice came from behind Clara, low and steady, and carrying an edge of steel that made Sterling's grip loosen slightly. Clara turned her head and saw a man standing at the base of the porch steps, tall and lean, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore the dusty clothes of a working cowboy, and a well-used Colt revolver hung at his hip. But there was something about the way he carried himself that suggested he was more than just another drifter looking for ranch work. Sterling's face twisted with anger. "This is none of your concern, Garrett. This is between me and the girl." The cowboy Garrett climbed the steps with an easy grace that belied the tension in his broad shoulders. "It became my concern when I heard you cheating an honest worker out of her wages. I have been riding with your outfit for 2 weeks now, and I have seen how hard Miss Bennett works. If you promised her 30 a month, then she has earned $90 and you owe her every penny." Clara felt a flicker of hope, though she tried to tamp it down. She had seen this man around the ranch, had noticed him because he was different from the other hands. He was quieter, more observant, and he had tipped his hat to her every time their paths crossed, treating her with a respect that most of the men did not bother to show. She had learned his name was Cole Garrett and that he had signed on as a temporary hand to help with the fall cattle drive, but she had never spoken more than a few words to him. Sterling released Clara's arm and turned his full attention to Garrett. "You have been here 2 weeks, and you think you can tell me how to run my ranch? You are fired, Garrett. Get your gear and get off my land." Garrett did not move. "I will leave, but not until you pay Miss Bennett what you owe her." "And if I refuse?" Sterling's hand moved toward the gun he wore at his belt, though he did not draw it. "Then I will make sure every rancher, every merchant, every decent person in Copper Creek knows that Howard Sterling is a cheat and a liar who steals from women," Garrett said calmly. "I have friends in this county, Sterling, people who respect my word. How long do you think your business will last when no honest person wants to work for you or trade with you?" The threat hung in the air between them, and Clara held her breath, watching Sterling's face turn an ugly shade of red. The rancher was clearly weighing his options, his pride warring with his pragmatism. Finally, he spat onto the porch floor, barely missing Clara's skirt. "Fine," he growled, "but she gets $30, not $90. That is my final offer." Garrett shook his head. "She gets $90, like you promised. And since you made her fight for it and tried to cheat her, you will pay her double, $180, right now." Sterling's eyes widened with shock and fury. "Like hell I will. You have lost your mind, Garrett." "I am perfectly sane," Garrett replied, his voice still steady. "You tried to rob this woman of her honest wages. You grabbed her and threatened her. You have shown yourself to be a man without honor, and that kind of behavior has consequences. Pay her $180, or I will make good on my promise to spread the word about what kind of man you really are. And I will start by riding into town right now and telling Sheriff McBride about how you assaulted Miss Bennett in front of a witness." Clara watched Sterling's face, saw the moment when he realized that Garrett was serious and that he had no good options left. The rancher's reputation was already rocky, she knew. There had been rumors about him shortchanging other workers, about him watering down the whiskey he sold to the saloon in town, about shady cattle deals. One more scandal might be enough to tip the scales against him. "You will regret this," Sterling said, but his voice had lost some of its fury. He turned and stomped into the house, leaving the door open behind him. Garrett moved to stand beside Clara, and she could smell the scent of horse and leather and something else, something clean like sage. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. "Did he hurt you?" Clara rubbed her arm where Sterling had grabbed her, feeling the tenderness of what would surely be a bruise. "I will be fine. Thank you for intervening. I do not know what would have happened if you had not been here." "Nothing good," Garrett said grimly. "Sterling is a bully, and bullies only understand strength. He will pay you what you are owed." Clara studied his profile, taking in the strong line of his jaw, the slight crook in his nose that suggested it had been broken at least once, the way his eyes never stopped moving, always watching for danger. "Why are you helping me? You do not even know me." Garrett turned to look at her, and she was struck by the intelligence and kindness she saw in his gaze. "Because it is the right thing to do," he said simply, "and because I know what it is like to be cheated and have no one stand up for you. If I can help prevent that from happening to someone else, then I will." Before Clara could respond, Sterling came back out holding a leather pouch that jingled with the sound of coins. He shoved it at Clara without looking at her. $180, he said through gritted teeth. "Count it if you want. Now get off my property, both of you." Clara took the pouch with trembling hands, hardly believing that it was real. She opened it and saw gold eagles and silver dollars, more money than she had ever held at one time in her entire life. She looked up at Garrett, wanting to thank him again, but he was already moving toward the steps. "Come on, Miss Bennett," he said. "Let us get your things and I will escort you into town." Clara hurried after him, clutching the pouch to her chest. She was aware of Sterling watching them from the doorway, his face twisted with hatred, but she forced herself not to look back. Whatever happened next, at least she had her wages, and that was more than she had dared to hope for an hour ago. They walked across the dusty yard toward the bunkhouse where Clara had been staying in a small room off the kitchen. The other ranch hands were out working, and the place was quiet except for the sound of chickens clucking in their pen and the distant lowing of cattle. Clara's mind was racing, trying to process everything that had just happened, trying to figure out what her next move should be. "Where will you go?" Garrett asked as they reached the bunkhouse. "Do you have family in Copper Creek?" Clara shook her head. "No, my father died 6 months ago in Kansas. I came here looking for work. I suppose I will find a room at the boarding house and look for another position." Garrett was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "What kind of work are you looking for?" "Anything honest," Clara said. "I can cook, clean, sew, tend to the sick. I am a hard worker, Mr. Garrett, even though Sterling tried to claim otherwise." "I believe you," Garrett said. "I've seen you working from dawn until long after dark every day for the past 2 weeks. You put the other hands to shame." Clara felt her cheeks warm at the unexpected praise. She ducked into her small room and began gathering her few possessions, packing them into a worn carpetbag that had belonged to her mother. She did not have much. 2 extra dresses, some undergarments, a hairbrush, a small Bible, a photograph of her parents on their wedding day. Everything she owned in the world fit into one bag, and the realization made her throat tight with emotion. When she emerged, Garrett was waiting for her, holding the reins of 2 horses. One was a sturdy bay gelding that she recognized as his own mount, and the other was a pretty little paint mare. "I borrowed her from the remuda," Garrett said, nodding toward the mare. "Figured you would rather ride than walk the 5 miles into town." Clara hesitated. "Will Sterling not be angry about that too?" Garrett smiled, and the expression transformed his serious face, making him look younger and more carefree. "I imagine he will be furious, but I will return her before sundown. He cannot complain too much since I'm still officially on his payroll until I collect my wages for the 2 weeks I worked." They mounted up and Clara settled into the saddle with a feeling of relief. Her feet were sore from standing all day in the hot kitchen, and the thought of walking 5 miles in the heat had been daunting. The little mare had an easy gait, and Clara found herself relaxing slightly as they rode away from the Sterling ranch. The Texas landscape stretched out around them in shades of brown and gold, with scattered mesquite trees and clumps of prickly pear cactus breaking up the endless prairie. The sky overhead was a brilliant blue, with a few wispy clouds drifting on the wind. It was beautiful in a harsh, unforgiving way, and Clara had grown to love it during her months in Texas, despite the hardships she had faced. "Tell me about yourself, Miss Bennett," Garrett said as they rode. "How did you end up working for a man like Sterling?" Clara considered how much to share, but there was something about Garrett that invited trust. Maybe it was the way he had stood up for her, or maybe it was the genuine interest she heard in his voice, but she found herself wanting to talk to him. "My father was a farmer in Kansas," she began. "He had a small place, nothing fancy, but it was ours. My mother died when I was 12, and after that it was just the 2 of us. He taught me everything he knew about hard work and making an honest living. He always said that if you give your word, you keep it, no matter what." "He sounds like a good man," Garrett said. "He was," Clara agreed, her voice softening. "But last winter he got pneumonia. We did not have money for a doctor, and I did the best I could, but it was not enough. He died in February, and I found out that he had borrowed money to pay for seed the previous spring. The bank took the farm, and I was left with nothing. I heard that there was work in Texas, so I sold everything I could and bought a ticket on the stage. Sterling was the first person to offer me a job, and I was so desperate that I did not ask enough questions. You could not have known he would try to cheat you," Garrett said. "Men like Sterling count on people being too desperate to fight back." "Well, I fought back today," Clara said, allowing herself a small smile. "Thanks to you." "You fought back before I got there," Garrett corrected. "I just helped even the odds a bit." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, and Clara found herself studying Garrett from the corner of her eye. He sat his horse with the ease of someone who had spent most of his life in the saddle, and there was a quiet confidence about him that she found appealing. He was probably somewhere in his late 20s, she guessed, old enough to have experience but young enough to still have idealism. She wondered what his story was, what had brought him to Texas, what he planned to do after he left the Sterling Ranch. As if sensing her thoughts, Garrett spoke. I should tell you something, Miss Bennett. I'm not just a drifter looking for ranch work. I have my own place about 20 miles north of here, near the town of Red Rock. It is not much yet, just a small ranch with about 200 head of cattle, but it is mine. I have been working odd jobs on other ranches to earn extra money while I build up my herd. Clara felt a flicker of surprise. If you have your own ranch, why were you working for Sterling? Because running a ranch takes more than just cattle, Garrett explained. It takes buildings, fences, equipment, and most of all, it takes hands to help with the work. I have been saving every penny I can so that I can hire a proper crew and really make a go of it. I was planning to work for Sterling until after the fall drive, collect my wages, and then head home with enough money to get me through the winter. And now you have lost that job because of me, Clara said, feeling a pang of guilt. I am sorry, Mr. Garrett. I did not mean for you to sacrifice your employment on my behalf. Garrett shook his head firmly. Do not apologize. I would make the same choice again in a heartbeat. Besides, I was already getting tired of working for a man like Sterling. There are other ranches, other jobs. They rode on, and Copper Creek gradually came into view ahead of them. It was a typical frontier town, with a single main street lined with false-fronted buildings. Clara could see the general store, the saloon, the hotel, the bank, and the church steeple rising above the other structures. There were people moving about their business, and horses tied to hitching posts, and the sound of a blacksmith's hammer ringing out from somewhere nearby. Garrett led them to the livery stable, where he arranged to board the horses for the afternoon. Then he walked with Clara down the main street toward the boarding house, carrying her carpet bag despite her protests that she could manage it herself. The boarding house was run by a woman named Mrs. Patterson, a widow in her 60s who had a reputation for running a clean, respectable establishment. She looked surprised when Clara and Garrett appeared on her doorstep, but her expression softened when Clara explained that she needed a room and could pay in advance. I have a small room on the second floor that just came available, Mrs. Patterson said. It is not fancy, but it is clean and quiet. $5 a week, including 2 meals a day. Clara did some quick calculations in her head. She had $180, which seemed like a fortune, but she knew it could disappear quickly if she was not careful. She needed to find work as soon as possible. I will take it, she said, counting out $10 from the pouch, for 2 weeks. Mrs. Patterson took the money and handed Clara a key. The room is at the top of the stairs, second door on the right. Supper is at 6 o'clock. Welcome to Patterson's boarding house, Miss Bennett. Clara thanked her and climbed the stairs, with Garrett following behind. The room was indeed small, barely large enough for the narrow bed, a chest of drawers, and a washstand, but it had a window that looked out over the main street, and the linens looked fresh and clean. After months of living in a cramped space off a hot kitchen, it seemed like a palace. Garrett set her carpet bag on the bed and turned to face her. Will you be all right here, Miss Bennett? Do you need anything else? Clara realized that she had been relying on his steady presence for the past few hours, and the thought of him leaving made her feel suddenly anxious. I will be fine, she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Thank you again for everything you did today, Mr. Garrett. I truly do not know how I can ever repay you. You do not owe me anything, Garrett said, but I do have a proposition for you if you're willing to hear it. Clara looked at him curiously. What kind of proposition? Garrett leaned against the door frame, his expression thoughtful. I told you that I have my own ranch, and that I have been trying to save money to hire help. Well, I need more than just ranch hands. I need someone to cook for the crew, to keep the house in order, to help with all the domestic work that I have been trying to do myself and doing poorly. I would like to offer you a job, Miss Bennett, $30 a month, plus room and board, and I give you my word that I will pay you every penny I owe you on time, without any arguments. Clara stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. You want to hire me, but you barely know me. I know that you are a hard worker, Garrett said. I know that you are honest and brave enough to stand up for yourself. I know that you are good at what you do, despite Sterling's lies. That is enough for me. The question is whether it is enough for you. I will not pretend that it will be easy. My ranch is small and isolated, and there is a lot of work to be done, but I promise you will be treated with respect and paid fairly. Clara's mind was racing. The offer was almost too good to be true, which made her wary. She had learned the hard way that promises could be broken, but when she looked into Garrett's steady gray eyes, she saw nothing but sincerity. May I ask you a question, Mr. Garrett? Of course. Why did you stand up for me today? You said you know what it is like to be cheated, but you did not explain what you meant by that. Garrett was quiet for a long moment, and Clara saw a shadow cross his face. When he spoke, his voice was low and edged with old pain. 5 years ago, I worked for a rancher in New Mexico. I spent 2 years helping him build his operation, working longer and harder than anyone else. He promised me a partnership, a share in the profits. But when the time came to make good on that promise, he told me he had changed his mind. He gave me 2 months' wages and told me to get out. I had nothing, no savings, no prospects. I vowed then that if I ever had my own place, I would never treat anyone the way he treated me. Clara felt her heart squeeze with sympathy. I am sorry that happened to you. Garrett shrugged, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. It was a hard lesson, but it taught me what kind of man I did not want to be. So what do you say, Miss Bennett? Will you come work for me? I will give you a week here at the boarding house to think it over. If you need time. Clara found herself making a decision that was based as much on instinct as on logic. Everything about Cole Garrett told her that he was a man of his word, a man who would keep his promises. And beyond that, she felt drawn to him in a way that she did not fully understand, a pull that went beyond simple gratitude. I do not need a week, she said. I will accept your offer, Mr. Garrett. When do you want me to start? Garrett's face lit up with a smile that made Clara's heart skip a beat. As soon as you are ready. I was planning to head back to my ranch tomorrow morning. If you would like to come with me, you are welcome. If you need more time to settle in here, I can wait a few days. Tomorrow morning is fine, Clara said. I have everything I need right here in this bag. Then it is settled, Garrett said, extending his hand. Welcome to the Garrett Ranch, Miss Bennett. Clara took his hand, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip. Thank you, Mr. Garrett. I promise you will not regret this. I know I would not, Garrett said softly, and for a moment their eyes met and held, and Clara felt a warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the September heat. Garrett left shortly after, promising to return at dawn the next morning to collect her. Clara spent the rest of the afternoon washing the dust from her hair and clothes, mending a torn hem on one of her dresses, and trying to calm the nervous excitement that fluttered in her stomach. She kept thinking about the way Garrett had stood up to Sterling, the way he had spoken about keeping his promises, the way his smile had transformed his serious face. She barely knew him, and yet she felt like she had made the right choice in agreeing to work for him. That evening at supper, she sat in the dining room with the other boarders, a collection of salesmen, clerks, and one school teacher who introduced herself as Miss Alice Monroe. The food was simple but well prepared, and Clara found herself relaxing as she listened to the conversation flowing around her. I heard there was some excitement out at the Sterling Ranch today, one of the salesmen said, looking around the table with the expression of a man who loved gossip. Something about a cowboy forcing Sterling to pay out a large sum of money to a woman he had cheated. Clara felt her cheeks burn, but she kept her eyes on her plate. Good for the cowboy, Miss Monroe said firmly. Sterling has been cheating people for years. It is about time someone made him pay. I heard the cowboy was Cole Garrett, another man said. He has a place up near Red Rock. Quiet fellow, but honest. My brother sold him some cattle last year, and Garrett paid cash on the barrel without trying to haggle the price down. Garrett is all right, the first salesman agreed. Unlike Sterling, who would cheat his own mother if he thought he could get away with it. Clara risked a glance up and found Miss Monroe watching her with intelligent brown eyes. The school teacher gave her a small, knowing smile, and Clara realized that the woman had guessed she was the subject of the story. After supper, Clara excused herself and went upstairs to her room. She sat by the window watching the sun set over the town, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. She thought about her father, about how proud he would have been that she had stood up for herself today. She thought about the future, about the ranch she would see tomorrow, about the work that awaited her. And she thought about Cole Garrett, about the way he had appeared like an answer to a prayer she had not even known she was praying. Sleep was slow to come that night, but when it did, Clara dreamed of wide-open spaces and stormy gray eyes and a voice that promised her she would be treated with respect and paid fairly. Dawn came too quickly and not quickly enough. Clara was awake before the sun, dressed in her sturdiest dress and with her carpet bag packed and ready. She went downstairs to find Mrs. Patterson already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. "You are up early, dear," the older woman said. "Excited about your new position?" "How did you know?" Clara asked, surprised. Mrs. Patterson chuckled. "This is a small town, Miss Bennett. Word travels fast. Besides, Cole Garrett was here an hour ago making arrangements to pay for your room for the 2 weeks since you would not be using it. He is a good man, that one. You are lucky to be working for him." Clara felt warmth spread through her chest at the knowledge that Garrett had been thoughtful enough to make sure she did not lose her money. "He does seem like a good man," she agreed softly. "He lost his parents when he was young," Mrs. Patterson said as she set a plate of eggs and bacon in front of Clara. "His father was a Texas Ranger who got killed in a shootout with outlaws, and his mother died of a fever a year later. Cole was raised by his uncle, a rancher up in the Panhandle. He learned the business from the ground up, and when his uncle died 3 years ago, he left Cole enough money to buy his own place. The boy has been working himself to the bone ever since, trying to build something lasting." Clara absorbed this information, feeling like she was getting a fuller picture of the man who had helped her. "He seems very determined." "He is," Mrs. Patterson agreed, "but he is also kind, which is not always the case with determined men. You will be safe with him, Miss Bennett. I would stake my reputation on it." Clara finished her breakfast just as the sound of hoofbeats came from outside. She grabbed her carpet bag and hurried to the door, pulling it open to find Garrett sitting astride his bay gelding with the little paint mare on a lead rope beside him. "Good morning, Miss Bennett," he said, tipping his hat. "Are you ready to see your new home?" "I am, Mr. Garrett," Clara replied, stepping out into the cool morning air. Garrett dismounted and helped her secure her bag to the saddle, then gave her a hand up onto the mare. His touch was gentle but firm, and Clara found herself very aware of the warmth of his hand on her waist as he steadied her. Once she was settled, he swung back up onto his own horse and they set off down the main street, heading north out of town. The sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon, casting long shadows across the land. The air was fresh and cool, not yet heated by the day, and Clara breathed deeply, feeling a sense of freedom that she had not experienced in months. She was leaving behind the drudgery and disappointment of the Sterling Ranch, heading towards something new and unknown, and the uncertainty of it was exhilarating rather than frightening. "Tell me about your ranch," Clara said as they rode. "What is it like?" Garrett's expression became animated as he talked, and Clara could hear the pride and affection in his voice. "It is nothing fancy, not yet anyway. The main house is small, just 3 rooms, but it is solid and well built. And there's a barn, a bunkhouse, that is currently empty since I have not hired any hands yet, a chicken coop, and a corral. I have about 200 head of cattle grazing on 2,000 acres of decent rangeland, with a creek that runs through the property year-round. The land is not as pretty as some places, but it is good, honest country, and it is mine." "It sounds wonderful," Clara said sincerely. "Or how long have you had it?" 3 years, Garrett replied. "I bought it with the inheritance my uncle left me, plus every penny I had saved from years of working other people's ranches. The first year was rough. I was alone, trying to do everything myself, and I learned real quick that one man cannot run a ranch on his own, no matter how hard he works. I have been hiring myself out for short jobs ever since, earning money to build up the place properly." And now you are ready to hire people permanently? Clara asked. Now I am ready to start, Garrett corrected. I have enough saved to pay you and hopefully hire 2 or 3 ranch hands for the winter. Come spring, if things go well, I can expand from there. It is slow going, but it is steady, and I would rather build something gradually than overextend myself and lose everything. Clara admired his practical approach. Too many men she had known wanted instant success, and they took reckless risks that ended in disaster. Garrett's careful, methodical plan spoke of wisdom and patience. They rode through country that grew gradually more rugged, with rolling hills and rocky outcroppings breaking up the flat prairie. Clara saw cattle bearing various brands grazing in the distance, and once they startled a small herd of pronghorn antelope that went bounding away across the grassland. Hawks circled overhead, and jackrabbits darted through the brush. As the morning wore on, the sun climbed higher, and the temperature began to rise. Clara was grateful for the bonnet that shaded her face, though she could feel sweat beginning to trickle down her back. Garrett kept their pace steady but not punishing, and he pointed out landmarks as they went. A distinctive rock formation, a stand of cottonwood trees that marked a water hole, a distant ridge that was the northern boundary of his property. There, Garrett said finally, pointing ahead, that is home. Clara looked where he indicated and saw a small collection of buildings nestled in a valley between 2 low hills. The main house was built of rough-hewn timber, with a stone chimney rising from one end. It was small, as Garrett had said, but it looked well-maintained, with a porch running along the front and shutters on the windows. The barn was larger than the house, a testament to the priorities of a working ranch, and she could see the other outbuildings he had mentioned scattered around the property. As they rode closer, Clara began to notice details. There was a vegetable garden beside the house, though it looked somewhat neglected, with weeds growing among the plants. Chickens scratched in the yard, and a couple of goats were tethered near the barn, clothes hung on a line, flapping in the breeze, and Clara realized with a start that Garrett had been doing his own laundry in addition to everything else. They rode into the yard and Garrett dismounted, then came around to help Clara down from the mare. His hands spanned her waist as he lifted her, and Clara felt a jolt of awareness at the contact. Their eyes met as her feet touched the ground, and for a moment, neither of them moved. Then Garrett stepped back, clearing his throat. "Welcome to the Garrett Ranch," he said. "Let me show you around." He led her first to the house, opening the door and stepping back to let her enter first. The interior was dim after the brightness outside, and it took Clara's eyes a moment to adjust. When they did, she found herself in a main room that served as both kitchen and living area. There was a cast-iron stove in one corner, a rough wooden table with 4 chairs, a pair of worn armchairs positioned near the fireplace, and shelves holding dishes and cooking supplies. The floor was wooden planks that needed sweeping, and there were dishes piled in a wash basin, but overall it was cleaner than Clara had expected for a bachelor household. "The bedroom is through there," Garrett said, gesturing to a door on one side of the room. "And there is a small storage room on the other side. You can have the bedroom, and I will sleep in the bunkhouse. It does not feel right for me to take the only proper bed when you're working here." Clara started to protest, but Garrett held up his hand. "I insist, Miss Bennett. The bunkhouse has several beds, and I will be perfectly comfortable there. Besides, you will need privacy, and this way you will have the house to yourself in the evenings." Clara realized he was right, and she appreciated his thoughtfulness. "Thank you, Mr. Garrett. That is very considerate." "Just doing what is right," Garrett said. "Now, let me show you the rest of the place." They spent the next hour walking the property, with Garrett explaining the layout and the work that needed to be done. The barn housed his 2 horses, the bay gelding named Sam, and a sturdy roan mare named Rosie. There were also a milk cow and her calf, and space for equipment and hay storage. The chicken coop held a dozen hens and 1 very proud rooster, and Garrett explained that eggs were a staple of his diet. The bunkhouse was a simple structure with 6 beds, a stove, and not much else. It was dusty from disuse, but Clara could see that it was soundly built. The corral was well maintained with sturdy fencing, and there was a covered area where Garrett could work with the horses in bad weather. I know it is not much, Garrett said as they walked back toward the house, but it is a start. With your help keeping the domestic side running smoothly, I can focus more on building up the herd and improving the ranch. I am planning to hire a couple of hands next week, men I worked with last year who I know are reliable. With them helping with the cattle work, we should be able to make real progress. It is a fine place, Mr. Garrett, Clara said honestly. You have done well to build all this on your own. Garrett looked pleased by the compliment. I appreciate that, Miss Bennett. Now, I am sure you are tired from the ride. Why don't you get settled in the house and I will see to the horses. We can figure out a routine over the next few days. Clara agreed and went back into the house, carrying her carpet bag into the bedroom. It was a small room, but it had a real bed with a feather mattress, a chest of drawers, and a window that looked out toward the hills. There was even a small mirror hanging on the wall and a washstand with a pitcher and basin. Clara unpacked her few belongings, hanging her dresses on pegs on the wall and arranging her brush and Bible on top of the chest of drawers. When she came back out into the main room, she rolled up her sleeves and surveyed the work that needed to be done. The dishes in the wash basin needed washing, the floor needed sweeping and scrubbing, the stove needed cleaning, and the shelves could use organizing. It was exactly the kind of work she was good at, and Clara felt a sense of satisfaction as she tied on an apron she found hanging on a peg and got started. By the time Garrett came back from the barn, Clara had washed and put away the dishes, swept the floor, and wiped down all the surfaces. She had also started a pot of beans soaking for supper and put on a pot of coffee to boil. I see you have been busy, Garrett said, looking around with approval. The place already looks better. There's plenty more to do, Clara said, but it is a start. I found some beans and salt pork in the pantry, and I'm making supper. Is there anything you do not eat? I will eat just about anything that does not eat me first, Garrett said with a grin. I am not a picky man, Miss Bennett. After years of my own terrible cooking, anything you make will taste like a feast. Clara laughed, and the sound seemed to fill the room with warmth. I will do my best not to disappoint you. They fell into an easy pattern over the next few hours. Garrett went out to check on the cattle, while Clara continued working on the house. She scrubbed the floor until it gleamed, organized the pantry, and tackled the laundry that had been piling up. It felt good to work, to see visible progress, to know that she was earning her wages honestly. When the sun began to set, Clara put together a simple but hearty meal of beans, salt pork, cornbread, and coffee. Garrett came in from his work dusty and tired, and he washed up at the pump outside before sitting down at the table. This smells amazing, he said as Clara set the plates down. I cannot remember the last time I had a proper meal. They ate together, and Clara found herself enjoying the conversation that flowed easily between them. Garrett told her about the cattle he had seen that afternoon, about his plans for improving the water supply to the far pasture, about the 2 hands he was hoping to hire. Clara talked about her father's farm in Kansas, about her mother's flower garden, about the books she had loved to read as a child. You are educated then, Garrett observed. That is good. I have some books here, nothing fancy, but you are welcome to read them whenever you have time. I would like that, Clara said. What kind of books do you have? Some poetry, some history, a few novels, Garrett said. My mother loved to read, and she made sure I learned to. She always said that a man's education was his most valuable possession because it was something no one could take away from him. Your mother sounds like she was a wise woman, Clara said softly. She was, Garrett agreed, and Clara saw the shadow of old grief in his eyes. I wish she could have lived to see this place. She would have loved it. They cleaned up the dishes together, and then Garrett excused himself to go to the bunkhouse for the night. Clara found herself strangely reluctant to see him go, even though she knew it was proper for them to sleep in separate buildings. She watched from the window as he crossed the yard carrying a lantern that bobbed in the darkness. That night, alone in the small house, Clara lay in the comfortable bed and thought about the strange turn her life had taken. Just yesterday morning, she had been furious and desperate, facing the possibility of being cheated out of her wages and thrown off the Sterling Ranch with nowhere to go. Now she was here, in a home of her own, not her own by ownership, but her own in the sense that she had a place and a purpose. And she was working for a man who treated her with respect, who kept his promises, who made her feel valued. She thought about Garrett, about the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, about the gentleness in his voice when he spoke to the animals, about the pride she had seen in his face when he showed her his ranch. There was something about him that drew her, something that went beyond simple gratitude or admiration. It was too soon to call it anything more than that, Clara told herself firmly. She had only known him for a day. But still, she could not deny that there was a connection between them, a spark that she had never felt with anyone else. The next few weeks passed in a blur of hard work and gradual adjustment. Clara quickly established a routine, rising before dawn to start breakfast, spending her days cleaning, cooking, mending, and tending to the chickens in the garden. Garrett worked from sunrise to sunset, repairing fences, checking on the cattle, breaking a young horse to saddle, and doing the 100 other tasks that went into running a ranch. True to his word, Garrett hired 2 ranch hands in the second week. They were both young men in their early 20s, brothers named Jack and Tom Fletcher, who had worked with Garrett on a drive the previous year. They were polite and hardworking, and they treated Clara with the same respect that Garrett showed her. They moved into the bunkhouse, and suddenly the ranch felt more alive, with the sound of male voices and laughter echoing across the yard. Clara cooked for the 4 of them, making hearty meals that fueled their long days of physical labor. She took pride in setting a good table, and the men were always enthusiastic in their praise of her cooking. Garrett made sure she knew how much he appreciated her work, thanking her after every meal, complimenting her on the improvements she had made to the house, and paying her wages promptly at the end of the month, counting out $30 silver into her hand. "That is what I owe you," he said, "and if you ever need an advance or if there is anything you need from town, you just let me know." Clara tucked the money away carefully, feeling a sense of security that she had not felt in a long time. She was building up savings, and more than that, she was building a life. As October gave way to November, the weather began to cool, and there was a crispness in the air that spoke of winter coming. The cattle were in good condition, and Garrett began making plans for the long, cold months ahead. He bought supplies in town, stocking up on flour, sugar, coffee, and other staples. He repaired the roof on the barn and the bunkhouse, making sure they would be weatherproof. He cut firewood, stacking it high near the house and the bunkhouse. Clara found herself watching Garrett more and more, noticing little things about him. The way he was always gentle with the animals, even when they were being stubborn. The way he listened carefully when anyone spoke, giving them his full attention. The way he worked alongside Jack and Tom, never asking them to do anything he would not do himself. The way he sometimes stood on the porch in the evenings, looking out at his land with an expression of deep contentment. And she noticed the way he looked at her sometimes, when he thought she was not paying attention. There was something in his eyes that made her breath catch, a warmth and intensity that spoke of feelings that went beyond employer and employee. One evening in late November, after Jack and Tom had gone to the bunkhouse, Clara and Garrett sat together on the porch, wrapped in coats against the chill. The sky was ablaze with stars, and the moon was nearly full, casting silver light across the landscape. "I want to thank you, Miss Bennett," Garrett said suddenly, "for everything you have done here. This place feels like a real home now, not just a place where I sleep between work days. You have made a difference." Clara felt her cheeks warm despite the cold. "You're welcome, Mr. Garrett. I'm happy to be here. You have given me an opportunity, and I am grateful for it." Garrett was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was softer. "I have been thinking lately that we have been working together for 2 months now, and we are still calling each other Mr. Garrett and Miss Bennett. It seems awfully formal given the circumstances. Would you be comfortable calling me Cole?" Clara's heart fluttered. "I would, if you would call me Clara." "Clara," Garrett said, and the way he spoke her name made it sound like something precious. "It is a beautiful name." "Thank you," Clara said softly, "and Cole suits you. It is strong and simple. Like you?" They sat in comfortable silence, and Clara was acutely aware of how close Cole was sitting, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. She found herself wishing he would reach out and take her hand, though she knew it would be improper. They were employer and employee, and there were boundaries that should not be crossed. But as the days passed, Clara found it increasingly difficult to think of Cole as just her employer. He was the first person she thought of when she woke in the morning and the last person she thought of before she fell asleep at night. She found excuses to bring him coffee while he was working, just so she could see his smile. She took extra care with her appearance, wearing her best dress on Sundays even though there was no church to attend out here. She caught herself daydreaming about what it would be like if things were different, if she were not just his housekeeper but something more. She thought Cole might be feeling the same way. She noticed how his gaze lingered on her when she moved around the kitchen. She saw how he always seemed to find reasons to come to the house during the day, even when there was no real need. She felt the tension that sparked between them when their hands accidentally touched while washing dishes or when they passed each other in the narrow doorway. Winter arrived in early December with a cold snap that brought freezing temperatures and a dusting of snow. The work on the ranch shifted to focus on making sure the cattle had access to water and feed, and Cole and the Fletcher brothers spent long hours breaking ice and distributing hay. Clara kept the house warm and welcoming, always with a hot meal ready when the men came in from the cold. One particularly frigid evening, Cole came to the house alone. Jack and Tom had stayed in the bunkhouse, exhausted from a long day. Clara was darning socks by the fire when Cole knocked on the door, and she felt her pulse quicken as she let him in. "I wanted to talk to you," Cole said, stamping the snow from his boots. "Do you have a few minutes?" "Of course," Clara said, setting aside her mending. "Would you like some coffee?" "That would be nice," Cole said, settling into one of the armchairs by the fire. Clara poured 2 cups of coffee and handed one to Cole, then sat in the other chair. The firelight played across Cole's face, highlighting the strong lines of his jaw and the weariness in his eyes. "This is going to sound strange," Cole began, staring into his coffee cup. "And I hope you will not think less of me for saying it. But I have to be honest with you, Clara. These past 3 months, working with you, getting to know you, it has been the best time of my life. I look forward to every morning because I know I will see you. I find myself making excuses to come to the house just so I can hear your voice. And I cannot stop thinking about what it would be like if you were not just my housekeeper, but something more." Clara's breath caught in her throat. She had dreamed of hearing these words, but now that they were spoken, she hardly knew how to respond. Cole looked up, meeting her eyes. "I know this is improper. You work for me, and I have no right to put you in an awkward position. But I cannot keep pretending that what I feel for you is just respect or gratitude. It is more than that, Clara, much more. I think I am falling in love with you." Clara set down her coffee cup with trembling hands. "Cole, I do not think less of you. I could never think less of you. The truth is, I have been feeling the same way. I tried to tell myself it was just gratitude, that I was confused because you helped me when I needed it most. But it is more than that. I think about you all the time. I care about you in a way that goes far beyond what an employee should feel for an employer." Cole stood up and crossed to her chair, kneeling down beside it so that his eyes were level with hers. "Then tell me I am not crazy. Tell me you feel this too." Clara reached out and cupped his face with her hand, feeling the roughness of his stubble against her palm. "You are not crazy. I feel it too, Cole. I have been trying to fight it, but I cannot anymore. I think I am falling in love with you too." Cole closed his eyes, and Clara saw the relief and joy wash over his face. When he opened them again, they were bright with emotion. "Clara, I know this is fast. I know we have only known each other for 3 months, but I also know that I have never felt this way about anyone before. I want to court you properly if you will let me. I want to see where this could go." "I want that too," Clara whispered. Cole took her hand and brought it to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. The gesture was so tender, so full of restrained passion, that Clara felt tears prick at her eyes. "I promise you," Cole said, his voice low and intense, "that I will never take advantage of you. You still work for me, and that means I have a responsibility to make sure you feel safe and respected. If you ever feel uncomfortable, if you ever want to stop this, you tell me, and there will be no hard feelings. Your job is secure, no matter what happens between us on a personal level. I trust you, Clara said simply, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. They sat together by the fire for a long time, talking in low voices, sharing stories from their pasts, learning more about each other. Cole told her about growing up with his uncle, about learning to rope and ride before he could read, about the loneliness of losing his parents so young. Clara told him about her mother's death, about the struggles of watching her father decline, about the fear she had felt when she found herself alone in the world. We have both lost so much, Cole said quietly. Maybe that is why we understand each other. Maybe, Clara agreed, or maybe we were just meant to find each other. When Cole finally left for the bunkhouse that night, he paused at the door and looked back at Clara. Good night, Clara. Sleep well. Good night, Cole, Clara replied, and the smile on her face felt like it might never fade. The winter months that followed were hard in terms of work and weather, but they were also some of the happiest of Clara's life. Cole courted her with a gentleness and respect that made her feel cherished. He brought her wildflowers that he found during his rounds, carefully preserved despite the cold. He carved her a new wooden spoon to replace one that had broken, sanding it smooth and polishing it until it gleamed. He read to her in the evenings from his small collection of books, his deep voice bringing the words to life. Clara expressed her feelings through her cooking, making Cole's favorite foods, baking pies and cakes that made the whole house smell like home. She mended his clothes with special care, embroidering his initials on his handkerchiefs. She listened to his dreams for the ranch and offered her own ideas, feeling like they were building something together. Jack and Tom noticed the change in their employer and his housekeeper, and they treated the situation with good-natured acceptance. They were careful to give Cole and Clara privacy when they could, and they never made inappropriate comments or jokes. Clara appreciated their discretion and their kindness. As winter deepened and Christmas approached, Cole made a trip into town to pick up supplies and mail. He came back with packages that he refused to let Clara see, hiding them in the bunkhouse with a mysterious smile. On Christmas Eve, after a special supper of roasted chicken and all the trimmings, Cole presented Clara with a small wrapped box. I hope you like it, he said, looking nervous. I'm not much good at picking out gifts. Clara opened the box with careful fingers and gasped when she saw what was inside. It was a delicate silver locket on a fine chain, with an intricate floral pattern engraved on the front. She opened it and found a tiny photograph of Cole on one side, and space for another photograph on the other. I thought you might want to put a picture of your parents there, Cole said. I know how much you miss them, and I wanted you to have something to remember me by even when I'm out on the range. Tears filled Clara's eyes as she looked at the beautiful gift. It was the most thoughtful present anyone had ever given her. Cole, it is perfect. Thank you so much. May I? Cole asked, gesturing to the locket. Clara nodded, and Cole took the locket from the box and moved behind her. She felt his fingers brush against the back of her neck as he fastened the clasp, and she shivered at the contact. When he was done, she turned to face him, and the look in his eyes took her breath away. You are beautiful, Clara, he said softly, inside and out. I am the luckiest man in Texas. Clara had a gift for Cole as well, a new shirt that she had sewn for him in secret using fabric she had bought with her wages when Cole had taken her to town in November. She had embroidered his initials on the cuff in blue thread, and she had made sure the fit was perfect. Cole accepted the gift with obvious pleasure, and he put the shirt on immediately, showing it off with a grin. They spent Christmas Day together, just the four of them on the ranch. Clara cooked a feast, and they ate until they were all groaning with fullness. In the evening, Jack brought out a harmonica, and Tom revealed that he had a decent singing voice, and they had an impromptu concert by the fire. Cole sang too, his deep baritone blending with Tom's tenor, and Clara found herself laughing and clapping along. When the Fletcher brothers finally headed back to the bunkhouse, Clara and Cole were left alone. They sat together on the porch, wrapped in blankets against the cold, watching the stars wheel overhead. "This has been the best Christmas I have had in years," Cole said. "Maybe the best Christmas of my life." "Mine too," Clara agreed, snuggling closer to him. Cole put his arm around her shoulders, and Clara rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. They stayed that way for a long time, comfortable in each other's presence, not needing words. "Clara," Cole said eventually, his voice rumbling in his chest, "I need to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer." Clara lifted her head to look at him. "What is it?" Cole took a deep breath. "I love you. I think I have loved you from the moment I saw you standing up to Sterling, refusing to back down even though you were scared. You are strong and brave and kind, and I cannot imagine my life without you in it. I know we have only been courting for a few months, but I'm a man who knows his own mind, and I know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Clara's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. Cole reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it to reveal a simple gold band with a small diamond that caught the starlight. "Clara Bennett, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, my love, for all the days we have left on this earth?" Clara felt tears streaming down her cheeks, but they were tears of joy. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Cole, I will marry you. I love you so much." Cole slipped the ring onto her finger, and then he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her for the first time. It was a gentle kiss, sweet and tender, full of promise. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling so wide it almost hurt. "You have made me the happiest man alive," Cole said, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise you, Clara, I will spend every day trying to be worthy of you. I will love you and protect you and cherish you for as long as I live. And I will love you just as fiercely," and Clara replied, "We will build a life together, Cole, a good life, full of love and laughter and hard work and joy." They sat together on the porch until the cold drove them inside, and even then, they were reluctant to part. But propriety demanded it, and Cole kissed Clara good night before heading to the bunkhouse, his steps light with happiness. Clara went to bed that night with Cole's ring on her finger and his locket around her neck, feeling like the luckiest woman in the world. She had gone from being cheated and desperate to being loved and engaged to a wonderful man, all in the space of a few months. Life could change so quickly, she marveled, and sometimes those changes were for the better. They were married in February in a simple ceremony in Copper Creek. The justice of the peace presided, and Jack and Tom served as witnesses. Mrs. Patterson from the boarding house and Miss Monroe, the school teacher, attended as well, both of them dabbing at their eyes with handkerchiefs as Clara and Cole exchanged vows. Clara wore a new dress she had made for the occasion, a soft blue wool that brought out the color of her eyes. Cole wore his best suit, brushed and pressed, and he looked so handsome that Clara could hardly believe he was hers. When the justice of the peace pronounced them man and wife, Cole kissed her with a passion that made Clara blush and the small audience cheer. They had a wedding supper at the hotel with food and wine and a cake that Mrs. Patterson had baked specially. It was a joyful celebration full of toasts and laughter and good wishes. Sheriff McBride stopped by to congratulate them, and several other townspeople came in to offer their best wishes to the happy couple. Cole had arranged for them to spend their wedding night at the hotel, in the best room available. It was a luxury after months of living simply on the ranch, and Clara felt shy and nervous as Cole carried her over the threshold, but Cole was gentle and patient, and he made love to her with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the big bed, and Clara felt a sense of completeness that she had never known before. "I love you, Mrs. Garrett," Cole whispered against her hair. "I love you too, Mr. Garrett," Clara replied, her heart full to overflowing. They returned to the ranch the next day, and life settled into a new pattern. Clara was no longer just the housekeeper, she was Cole's wife and partner. They worked together to improve the ranch, making plans for the future, dreaming of the life they would build. Spring came early that year, bringing warmth and new life to the land. The grass turned green, wildflowers bloomed, and the cattle began dropping calves. Cole hired 2 more hands to help with the spring work, and the ranch hummed with activity. Clara planted a large garden with vegetables and herbs and flowers, and she spent her afternoons tending to it, her hands in the rich soil, her face turned toward the sun. In May, Clara realized she was pregnant. She told Cole one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Cole's face lit up with wonder and joy, and he pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "A baby," he said, his voice full of awe. "We are going to have a baby. Clara, you have given me everything I ever wanted, a home, a family, a future. I love you so much." "I love you too," Clara said, laughing and crying at the same time. "We are going to be parents, Cole. Can you believe it?" The months that followed were busy and happy. Clara continued her work on the ranch, though Cole was careful to make sure she did not overexert herself. He hired a young woman from town, a girl named Emma who needed work, to help with the heavy chores. Emma was cheerful and hardworking, and she and Clara quickly became friends. As Clara's belly grew, Cole became increasingly protective, fussing over her and making sure she was comfortable. Clara found it endearing, even when it was occasionally frustrating. She knew Cole's protectiveness came from a place of deep love, and she cherished it. In November, as the first cold winds of winter began to blow, Clara went into labor. Cole rode like a madman to fetch the midwife from town, and Mrs. Patterson came as well, bringing supplies and calm competence. The labor was long and difficult, but when it was over, Clara held a healthy baby boy in her arms, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that already looked like they would be gray like his father's. Cole wept when he saw his son for the first time, tears of pure joy streaming down his face. "He is perfect," he said, his voice breaking. "Thank you, Clara. Thank you for this gift." They named him James, after Cole's father, and they called him Jamie. He was a good baby, healthy and strong, and he quickly became the center of their world. Cole was a devoted father, helping with the middle-of-the-night feedings, changing diapers without complaint, spending hours just watching his son sleep. The ranch continued to prosper. By the time Jamie was 2, Cole had increased the herd to 500 head and had hired a full crew of hands. The ranch was no longer a struggling operation. It was a successful business. Cole built an addition onto the house, adding 2 more bedrooms and a proper parlor, and Clara furnished it with care, choosing pieces that were both practical and beautiful. They had 2 more children in the years that followed. A daughter they named Rose, with Clara's blonde hair and Cole's gray eyes, was born when Jamie was 3. And another son, William, called Will, arrived 2 years after that. The house rang with the sound of children's laughter, and the ranch became a place of life and joy. Clara sometimes thought back to that day when Howard Sterling had tried to cheat her, when she had been desperate and alone and frightened. She thought about how Cole had appeared like a guardian angel, standing up for her when no one else would, forcing Sterling to pay double what he owed. She thought about how Cole had hired her, given her a chance, treated her with respect and kindness. And she thought about how that simple act of decency had blossomed into a love that had changed both their lives. Cole had saved her, but she had saved him too. He had told her once, years later, that he had been lonely before she came, that he had been working himself to exhaustion to avoid feeling the emptiness of his life. Clara had filled that emptiness with love and laughter and purpose. They had saved each other, and together they had built something beautiful. One evening when Jamie was 10, Rose was 7, and Will was 5, the family sat together on the porch, watching the sun set over the land. The children were playing with a puppy that Cole had brought home from town, and their shrieks of laughter filled the air. Clara sat in a rocking chair, mending a torn shirt, while Cole sat beside her, whittling a toy for Will. Do you ever think about how different things could have been? Clara asked quietly. If you had not been at the Sterling Ranch that day? If you had not stood up for me? Cole set down his whittling and reached for Clara's hand, lacing his fingers through hers. I think about it sometimes, he admitted. But I do not believe it was chance, Clara. I think we were meant to find each other. I think God or fate or whatever you want to call it brought us together because we needed each other. I believe that too, Clara said softly. You gave me everything, Cole, a home, a family, a purpose. You gave me love. And you gave me the same, Cole replied. You made me a better man, Clara. You made my life worth living. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play, feeling the peace and contentment that came from knowing they had built a good life together. The ranch stretched out around them, a testament to years of hard work and dedication. The house behind them was full of warmth and love, and the family they had created was healthy and happy. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Jamie came running up to the porch. Papa, will you tell us a story? He asked, his eyes bright with excitement. What kind of story? Cole asked, grinning. Tell us how you and Mama met, Rose chimed in, climbing into Clara's lap. That is my favorite story. Cole and Clara exchanged a glance and both of them smiled. It was a story they had told many times, but the children never tired of hearing it. Well, Cole began, his voice taking on the cadence of a storyteller, it was a hot day in September, back in 1882. I was working on a ranch owned by a mean old man named Sterling, and your mama was working there too. Sterling was trying to cheat your mama out of the wages he owed her, and I could not stand by and let that happen. So you made him pay double, Jamie interrupted, even though he had heard the story a dozen times before. That is right, Cole said. I made him pay double, and then I hired your mama myself. Best decision I ever made. And then you fell in love, Rose said dreamily. And then we fell in love, Clara confirmed, hugging her daughter close. And we got married, and we built this ranch together, and then we had you three, and we lived happily ever after. That is a good story, Will said, climbing up into Cole's lap. It is the best story, Cole agreed, because it is true. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Clara looked at her husband and her children, and she felt a profound sense of gratitude. Life had been hard sometimes, but it had also been full of unexpected blessings. She had faced injustice and poverty and fear, but she had also found love and security and joy. Cole met her gaze, and in his eyes she saw the same gratitude, the same love, the same contentment. They had started as employer and employee, had become friends, then lovers, then husband and wife, and finally parents. They had built a life together from nothing, and it was a life worth celebrating. The years continued to pass, bringing changes and challenges, but also continued happiness. Jamie grew into a strong, capable young man who loved the ranch and wanted to take it over someday. Rose inherited her mother's kindness and her father's determination, and she dreamed of becoming a teacher. Will was the wild one, always getting into mischief, but with a heart of gold. Cole and Clara grew older together, their hair turning gray, their bodies showing the wear of years of hard work. But their love never diminished. If anything, it grew stronger with each passing year, deepened by shared experiences, by trials overcome together, by the life they had built. When their children were grown and starting families of their own, Cole and Clara would sit together on the porch in the evenings, holding hands and watching the sunset, just as they had done for decades. They would talk about the past, about the present, about the future they saw unfolding for their children and grandchildren. "Do you have any regrets?" Clara asked one evening when they were both in their 60s. Cole considered the question carefully. "No," he said finally. "I have made mistakes, but I do not regret any of the important choices I made, especially not the choice to stand up for you that day at Sterling's ranch. That choice gave me everything that matters." "Me neither," Clara said. "Even the hard times were worth it because they led me to you." They sat in peaceful silence, two old people who had loved each other well for more than 30 years. The ranch around them was thriving, run now by Jamie and his wife, with help from Will, who had decided he loved ranching after all. Rose had indeed become a teacher, and she taught in the school in Copper Creek, but she came home often to visit. The house was often filled with grandchildren now, and Clara loved having the young ones around, even when they were loud and chaotic. Cole was a doting grandfather, always ready with stories or treats or piggyback rides despite his aching joints. One spring morning, when the wildflowers were blooming and the air was sweet with the scent of new growth, Cole and Clara took a walk together around the ranch. It was something they did often, walking the land they had worked so hard to build, remembering the early days when it had been just the two of them and a dream. They walked hand in hand, moving slowly, stopping often to rest and to admire the view. They looked at the enlarged barn, the sturdy fences, the fat cattle grazing contentedly, the house that had grown from 3 rooms to 8 over the years. "We did good, did we not?" Cole said, looking at Clara with eyes that still held all the love they had held on their wedding day. "We did very good," Clara agreed. "We built something that will last, Cole. Something our children and grandchildren can be proud of." "Our legacy," Cole said softly. "Our legacy," Clara echoed. They stood together looking out over the land, feeling the sun warm on their faces and the breeze ruffling their hair. And in that moment, Clara thought about how far they had come from that day in September 1882, when a cowboy had refused to stand by while an employer cheated a hard-working woman. Cole's act of decency had rippled outward, changing not just their lives, but the lives of everyone who came after them. It was a good life, Clara thought. A very good life indeed. Years later, when Clara was in her 70s, she would sit in a rocking chair on the porch, wrapped in a quilt, and watch her great-grandchildren playing in the yard. Cole had passed away peacefully in his sleep 2 years earlier, and Clara missed him every single day. But she did not feel alone. His love surrounded her still in the house they had built, in the family they had created, in the land they had nurtured together. Her children and grandchildren took care of her, making sure she was comfortable and never lonely. They brought her meals, read to her, sat with her in the evenings, and listened to her stories about the old days, and Clara told those stories willingly, wanting to make sure that the younger generations understood where they came from, understood the values that had built this family. She told them about hard work and honesty, about standing up for what was right even when it was difficult, about the importance of keeping your promises. She told them about love, about how true love was not just passion and romance, but also partnership and respect and choosing each other every single day. And she told them about the day a cowboy named Cole Garrett had changed her life forever, standing up to a bully and making him pay double, then offering her honest work and treating her with dignity. She told them how that simple act had led to a love story that had spanned decades, a marriage that had weathered every storm, a family that was strong and close and full of love. "Your grandfather was the best man I ever knew," Clara would say, her eyes misty with memory. "He was not perfect, but he was good. He kept his word. He worked hard. He loved deeply. He made me feel valued and cherished every day of our life together. That is the kind of person you should all strive to be." One autumn evening, as the sun was setting and painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Clara felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. She was sitting on the porch, as she had done thousands of times before, wrapped in her quilt. Her daughter Rose sat beside her, holding her hand. "Mama, are you comfortable?" Rose asked gently. "Do you need anything?" Clara shook her head. "I'm fine, sweetheart. I'm just thinking about your father. I miss him so much." "I know you do," Rose said, squeezing her mother's hand, "but you will see him again soon." "I hope so," Clara said. "I have so much to tell him. About the grandchildren getting married, about the great-grandchildren being born, about how well Jamie is running the ranch. He would be so proud." "He knows, Mama," Rose assured her. "Wherever he is, he knows, and he is proud." Clara closed her eyes, and in her mind she could see Cole as clearly as if he were standing right in front of her. Not the old man he had been at the end, but the young cowboy who had stood up for her all those years ago. She could see his gray eyes, his strong hands, his gentle smile. She could hear his voice telling her that he loved her, that she had made him the happiest man alive. "I am ready," Clara whispered. "I am ready to go home." Rose's eyes filled with tears, but she did not try to argue. She had known this day was coming. "I love you, Mama. Thank you for everything you gave us. Thank you for being the best mother anyone could ask for." "I love you too, sweetheart," Clara said, her voice growing faint. "Take care of your brothers. Take care of the ranch. Take care of each other. Remember what your father and I taught you. Love hard, work hard, keep your promises, stand up for what is right." "We will, Mama, we promise." Clara felt herself drifting, felt the boundaries between waking and sleeping, between life and whatever came next, growing thin. And then, in the space between one breath and the next, she saw him. Cole, young and strong, standing in a field of wildflowers, his hand outstretched toward her. "Clara," he said, and his voice was just as she remembered it, deep and warm and full of love. "I have been waiting for you." Clara reached out and took his hand, and she felt young again, felt all the aches and pains of age fall away. "I am here," she said. "I am finally here." "Come on," Cole said, his eyes crinkling with that smile she had loved for so many years. "Let us go home." And hand in hand, they walked together into forever, their love story complete, their legacy secure, their lives well lived. Behind them on the porch of the ranch they had built together, Rose wept for her mother, but she also smiled through her tears, knowing that Clara and Cole were together again, that their love had transcended even death. The ranch would go on, passed down through generations, a testament to two people who had refused to accept injustice, who had chosen love over loneliness, who had built something lasting and good. The story of Clara and Cole would be told and retold, becoming family legend, inspiring their descendants to live with the same integrity, the same passion, the same commitment to doing what was right. It was a love story that had started with a cowboy refusing to let an employer cheat a hard-working woman. It was a love story that had grown through shared dreams and hard work and unwavering devotion. And it was a love story that would echo through time, a reminder that sometimes one act of courage and decency can change everything, can create ripples that spread outward and touch countless lives. In the end, that was what mattered most. Not the money, not the property, not the success of the ranch. What mattered was the love they had shared, the family they had created, the values they had lived by and passed on. That was their true legacy, and it was a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. The sun set on the Garrett Ranch, and the stars came out one by one, watching over the land that Clara and Cole had loved so well. And somewhere, in whatever place souls go when their earthly journey is done, two people who had loved each other truly and completely walked hand in hand through fields of endless wildflowers together for all eternity. Their story was complete, a tale of injustice overcome, of love discovered, of a life well lived. It was a story that had begun with anger and desperation and ended with peace and fulfillment. It was a story that proved love could heal old wounds, that kindness could change destinies, that two people working together could build something beautiful and lasting. And it was a story that would never truly end because it lived on in the hearts and lives of everyone who came after them, a bright thread of hope and love woven into the tapestry of time. The end.